Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from Lagos, the nation's commercial nerve center and our global headquarters here at Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Let's bring you up to speed with those big happenings we've been helping you to trace and track from yesterday all the way till midday in politics and in the polity. The Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, apologizes to Nigerians over blackout experienced across the country. Says situation was beyond control, but government is working to fulfill its promise on delivering electricity. Former President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Iheanacho, says 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and Kano Governor Abba Yusuf shouldn't have contested in that election, following questions around party membership, blames judicial competence. And the Independent National Electoral Commission meets leaders of political parties, unveiled draft guidelines ahead of the 2027 general election. As one of the watchers on your behalf of what's playing out in politics, I can tell you that a lot is already happening as we speak in preparation for the 2027 general elections. And everyone is involved in terms of stakeholders. I can tell you for a fact that the PDP group, loyal to Nyesom Wike, the APC, are preparing for the national convention of the party ahead of the primaries they'll be holding later on, because the window has now been opened between April the 23rd and May the 30th for primaries, disputes and appeals to be resolved within those periods. After May 30th, we should be able to be clear on who is representing any of the 19 or now 21 political parties. We don't know that all of them will field presidential candidates or not. So our eyes, our ears, and our team all over the place, making sure we'll bring you up to speed as far as the preparations are concerned. But there's something I want to show you ahead of that preparation. The Electoral Act 2026 has worked in such a way that it is making effort to prevent certain things from happening. So let me read this particular section of the law for you. So, if you can go back to the section, let's go back to section 77.4, if the producer can take it back to the very beginning so I can read exactly and give the interpretation. Fantastic. So, each political party shall make register available to the commission not later than 21 days before the date fixed for the party primaries, congresses, and conventions. So, this means that the days have now been reduced from the initial 30 to 21 days. So whenever you fix for any of these events, whether it's a primaries or not, you must provide your party register both in digital form and in physical form, which is why you see the digital registration drive. But if you go to the next subsection, subsection 7 of 77, which prescribes penalty. A party that fails to submit the membership register within the stipulated time shall not be eligible to field a candidate for that election. So, number one, you must be a member of the party. Number two, your party must submit all registered members. Anybody whose name is not in that register cannot contest or be contested for in that election. But let's go to section 35 of the Electoral Act 2026, which is one of the provision, if my producer can get, fantastic, where a candidate knowingly allows himself to be nominated by more than one political party or more than one constituency, his nomination shall be void. So that era of contesting primaries for the presidential election and then you lose and run to go contest for Senate, I'm sorry, kiss it goodbye. So just to bring you up to speed as to some of the reforms we expect. But the politicians, we have to watch them because they always have a way around, no matter how tight the situation is. We've been around for a while, so we know how this thing works. But let's tell you something, that the 2027 election may just be less than a year, but the ripples of that 2023 election continue to shape political discussions. Former President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Iheanacho, said that the former presidential candidates of the Labour Party, Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso, or not Rabiu Kwankwaso, the other one, should not be allowed to by the court to contest in the 2023 elections. Justice Salami added that the inadequacies and incompetence of the judges are responsible for some of the wrong verdicts. Speaking to journalists at his residence in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, Justice Salami said Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso have been maybe disqualified because of the time they defected, both from the Labour Party and the New Nigeria People's Party has submitted their members list to the Independent National Electoral Commission. So let's be clear, it's either Abba Yusuf or Rabiu Kwankwaso. But let's take a listen to the Judex, retired.
When you see the judgment of some of them, they bring the Supreme Court judgment to be astounded and wonder what is happening. For instance, Obi or not, they are allowed to contest election, presidential election, and it said that by the time we lost PDP primary, Labour Party had submitted this list of members to INEC. How them to see, and the Constitution says there can't be independent candidates. How did he become a candidate if it doesn't belong to Labour Party? The same thing happened to the governor of Kano State, who has now defected to APC. His name is not in the NNPP register, but they issued him with membership card, and the register is supposed to be the mother of the card. What is the source of his register? His membership. But the Supreme Court continued, even though the tribunal and Court of Appeal frowned at it. And that's the problem of competence.
Let's say with the issues around elections, election management, political parties, the Independent National Electoral Commission yesterday presented a draft copy of the regulations and guidelines for leaders of political parties with emphasis on party administration, campaign financing, registration and deregistration, addressing political party leaders in Abuja. The INEC chairman, Professor George Amopiton, says a review of the regulations in 2023 and this guideline became necessary following the passage of the new law. However, Inter-Party Advisory Council had faulted some clauses in the new Electoral Act.
The leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission meets with leaders of political parties at the INEC headquarters.
You have made yourself available.
The meeting aims to deliberate on the newly drafted elections regulations and guidelines that will govern the conduct of the 2027 general election.
The Commission has concluded a clause-by-clause realignment of our regulations and guidelines to ensure that they are not only legally aligned, but operationally in sync with the new Act. It is our hope that these updated guidelines will foster a more transparent, fair, and equitable electoral landscape for all the stakeholders involved.
The electoral umpire also highlights some key amendments to the 2023 regulations and guidelines as it urges political parties to pay attention to them.
We would like the political parties to take special note of Clause 40, subparagraphs 4 and 5 of the draft regulation dealing with election expenses of political parties for the management of party primaries and for the conduct of elections. Clear guidelines have been instituted to govern the day-to-day functioning of political parties, ensuring compliance with our laws and promoting accountability.
The meeting is well attended by chairmen and secretaries of political parties or their representatives, and the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council speaks on their behalf, spotlighting concerns with the new Electoral Act.
IPAC firmly demand that the National Assembly, as a matter of urgency, revisit and amend the Electoral Act 2026. Specifically, the provisions mandating direct primaries must be reconsidered and the option of direct primaries restored or indirect primary restored. The choice of candidate selection method remains an internal affair of political parties and must not be subjected to undue legislative interference.
The electoral umpire is empowered by the Constitution to regulate activities of political parties as well as some electoral processes, and this meeting is expected to get the inputs of political parties to the draft copy of the 2026 regulations and guidelines.
Well, let's shift our attention away from elections and talk to you about the Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabo, who has apologized over the outages being experienced by Nigerians. And he's spoken about this in a press conference. Let's take a listen to him.
Continue to engage the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Gas to ensure that we sit down with the gas supply, ready to we're able to come up with workable and practical solutions to this problem. Why they should not be open? Why plants have farm supply contracts? So that it's not just a message either. Because power is key to our economic development and industrial growth. What matters to me most now is this job that I'm doing as the Honorable Minister of Power. And excelling on that job is my priority for now. Tackling foreseen, known and unforeseen challenges is my priority for now. And resolving the power supply challenges is my priority for now. We have between now and 31st March, if I'm interested in the gubernatorial contest in Oyo State.
We're not going to talk about politics or power, but a major infrastructure has to do with power. But another thing we will need to talk about today has to do with our seaports. It's where major trade happens around the world. If you don't get your seaports sorted, you're going to suffer. Nigeria, for instance, has two big seaports, the Apapa, which is the largest, and then Tinkan, which is supposed to be the second largest. It was built many years ago in the early, maybe 1913 or so. But let's talk about what happened in the UK. The president had gone to the United Kingdom on the invitation of King Charles III. And part of the deliverables of that visit was this, what they call the maybe financing agreement, which is more like a loan between Nigeria and the United Kingdom to the tune of £746 million. In dollar terms, maybe about almost $1 billion. Let's bring in the man who understands how these things work. Our guest, Capt. Iheanacho, a big boy ago. He's a former MPA, that's Nigeria Ports Authority General Manager. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here.
I have loads of questions to ask you within the short time we have.
Problem.
But let's, you know, there's the argument of over-centralization, what they call the Lagos-centric form of development in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If we know the history of the port that was built maybe in 1913 or so, it helped the British people, our colonial masters, to have their transatlantic slavery routes and all of that. It has metamorphosed into what we have today, which is a multi-purpose seaport where transshipment and all kinds of things have happened. However, it's an old port, and people are arguing about the fact that if our trade in that port in Nigeria is about 80% of what we do, it's important to take a look at upgrade and renovation and making it smart as possible. But what's your take?
Yeah, thank you very much. What we are about to experience now is what you call port stimulus for economic growth. And how does it happen? It happens that for an aging port like that, government injects money into it to, amongst other things, address three important areas. One, to upgrade the infrastructure. Two, to introduce new technologies. And three, to come up with new management initiatives so as to place the port for the future. The government is going to go benefit from it in terms of economic returns by the port functionally taking a new look before customers in 3 areas. One, there will be enhancement of trade efficiency. The second one is that logistics will be done efficiently but at reduced cost. And the third one is that there will be attraction of foreign investment.
One of the challenges we have with the Apapa and Tinkan, which is earmarked for this, I'm looking at what they say is the key objective: full automation, reduce congestion, increase cargo capacity, improved operational efficiency, and all of that. From your experience, I don't know when this deal is going to start. I don't have all the details in terms of financing. What I know about this finances is guaranteed by the UK Export Finance, and it's going to be what do you call it now? Coordinated by Citibank, which is spoken in Nigeria. So I don't know what the interest is over time, but I know that bilateral agreements like this, maybe it's no more than 5. 5 is even too much. Maybe 2.
It
might be 1 or 2.
That is less than LIBOR.
Yes, it's way less than what it should be.
Yes.
So, but it's a lot of money that we've collected, and they've also protected their own investment in terms of contracting 70 million to 120,000 tons of steel and other forms of contract. But walk us through. We're already dealing with congestion, so if we are rehabilitating, how are we going to manage that side by side? Because that's a conversation I've now had so much about.
Okay, it depends on what you mean by congestion. Is this congestion of the port or the road?
The port is generally congested, the area.
Okay.
But now we want to do a rehabilitation, a revamping.
Let me tell you what we mean by improvement in technology. This improvement in technology is going to spread into so many areas. One is that the cargo handling gear will be highly automated, which means discharge rate will be increased. Again, intermodalism, what I mean intermodalism is railroad and all that. Yes, will have to improve. The channel itself will have to be deepened further so that bigger ships will come in. Bigger ships is a function of more revenue because MPA revenue stands on 2 pillars. One is ship dues and the other cargo dues. And these are all functions of size of vessels. So there are other things that will complement what will happen now to ensure that what you are saying will never happen. And that is having gridlock and all that. I think that's what you mean. Right now, barging operations are going on well. For the roads, there is what you call the maritime logistics ring. For those 2 ports, for instance, the maritime logistics ring is an imaginary line you draw from Ijoro-Lopa all through the Badagry Express Road along Gorile and Babs and Iheanacho to Mile 2. Now, all those areas must also be planned so that they can be port-centric. And that's why some of us advocate that the port master plan that MP is embarking on should be supported by the local governments that are relevant and the state government, the Lagos state government, so that spatial management and planning will all be focused on making sure that those corridors are free. Because these ports you see there, their economic geographical reach is about 320 kilometers away from where they are. And the only artery that connects them to those areas are the highways. So they dare not block. If they block, that means we are going to experience port inefficiency, even in the face of all this.
I have to stay quiet so that you take your time to educate the public, and so that they will understand, because there will be cost for upgrade.
Yes.
there will be cost for this development.
Yes, yes.
A lot of cost. Now, and the reason I'm relaying this as well, because sometimes as a country we fail to plan properly.
Yes.
Look at what happened with Ajaokuta. Where we have the raw material is in one location. Where we want to process the raw materials another location. That's why it was already dead on arrival. According to the analysts who understand how this works. So where should we start from? I think that's the right question I want to ask.
No, it's not.
Where should we start
from? It's not a question of where. In this type of project, you run. It's good for you to identify the spectrum of what is going to be done, and then they are done concurrently. What I am saying here is that with all this port rehabilitation and port modernization, which is good, there is need to look at other complementary things, and those are the things I'm letting you know now. For instance, if we take road, we must make sure that this ring I've just drawn for you, this logistic ring, should be kept free, so that cargoes coming in or going out, exiting the port, must freely access the highways to get to where those cargoes are going. So that it doesn't matter what happens with the traffic flow, you don't experience what we call point of traffic asymptote when it comes to traffic congestion.
I want you to assume that you're speaking to a 3-year-old.
Yes.
For the purpose of general reference.
Yes.
Walk us through what happens when the ship is coming from wherever they are coming from, down to when it gets to the port, down to the offloading of those things, down to land, down to destination in country.
Thank you.
If you can do it in 1 minute.
Okay.
It will help us
to understand. Yes. You see, when a ship arrives, there is clearance to bring her in. When she comes in, customs will carry out all the border post agencies will carry out their proceedings, especially the 3 of them, customs, immigration, and port health. When that is done, customs comes back to do what we call breaking of bulk. And if all other tariffs and everything is paid, cargo discharge will commence. When that is done, cargo go through cargo clearance in the port, and then it leaves the port.
Okay.
That is it.
So, of what is going on now at the port as we speak, let's use Apapa, for instance, or use both Apapa and Tinkan as an example. What is the biggest challenge right now that is affecting both fluidity of trade, efficiency of the port, and maybe costing us some revenue that needs to be prioritized as soon as yesterday?
Good. If we automate the ports and then we upgrade the infrastructure, like what is going to be done, and then build up human capacity, we shall be achieving a result of making our ports to be regionally competitive.
That's across the sub-region?
Yes, and as soon as we're regionally competitive, the cargoes will come to us. When they come to us, good news, but we too should be able to handle, because the port is not a storage area. It is a transit area. We must make our ports to be as transit as possible.
That is the game.
That's the game.
Just like the airport.
Exactly. So you make the port the port, to make it a very good transit area, we must realize one thing. The port wears 2 caps. One of the caps is maritime logistics, where you have the port, shipping companies, and freight forwarders. The other cap is that it's a nodal point where international border post regulations are enforced. Both parties must make sure that they encourage, 1, trade facilitation. They encourage, 2, a way to attract foreign investment. And these are done by making sure that we continue to maintain a high standard of port reputation. Port reputation is what the shipping community will see and say, yes, even in the face of ACFA, I won't, because it's the ship, it's the cargo owner that decides the destination of this cargo. He will now say, yes, I want my cargo in one of the ports of Nigeria.
Fantastic. As we begin to wind up, I like the way you have put it. I know that I heard maybe work will start this year. It's about 48 months work that should be completed in about less than 2 years. That's a year and a half.
Yeah.
But let me drag you into the politics of things, if you don't mind.
No, I'm a technocrat.
Yes.
I don't want to go into the.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into bed. If you.
No. The
yeah.
question I want to ask is not that difficult. I started off with that.
Yes.
Decentralization.
Yes.
Because other regions are saying this is economic marginalization.
Yeah.
Why always? I know the question of viability is there.
Yes.
But it's like saying you graduated, you want 5 years experience. It doesn't work that way. You have to get to the job first before you need a 5-year experience.
Yes.
There's the Deep Seaport. There is the Calabar port. There is the port. What is happening with all of those?
The shipper. What I can say is that the shipper determines where his cargo is received. Let me give you an example. At times when I travel to UK, I may decide to access Nigeria through Abuja. I may decide to come to Lagos. So professionally, how I want to keep it is that the shipper determines where his cargo goes to.
I know I don't want to drag into politics. All I was asking is that we need to address that bed properly so that we have the luxury of choice, not limited by, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I must thank you so much, Captain Iheanacho Ibuwogo. We're going to be having you a lot more as that project commences anytime soon.
I'll be available, yeah.
Former manager, general manager rather, MPA. So you just stay and wait. We'll be back in, okay, we're not going anywhere. Let's just tell you this story before we go, that the former Nigerian ambassador to the United Kingdom, Ambassador Sarafa Ishola, has held critical stakeholders engagement with residents and his supporters from the 20 local government areas of Ogun State, with discussions centering around the political ambition under the All Progressives Congress.
And thank all of you for this show of solidarity. The purpose of our gathering today is to harmonize all the support groups in support of the ambition of Sharafa Tunji Ishola. And I want to also acknowledge your efforts. Some of you have embarked on this program for over 2 years. I will never take you for granted. But as we move on, it's very necessary to harmonize in various local governments so that we continue to stand together and bond together to be able to achieve our desired objective.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.